April 12, 1942. A cramped attic room in a nondescript house on the outskirts of Lille, northern France. The air hangs heavy with the scent of damp wood and stale cigarette smoke, the kind that clings to everything like a persistent fog. Rain patters against the slate roof, a rhythmic drumbeat that masks the faint hum of the radio transmitter hidden beneath a false floorboard. You can almost feel the chill seeping through the thin walls, the way it bites at your fingertips as you huddle over the Morse key. Obergefreiter Karl-Heinz Becker, a wiry 28-year-old signals operator in the Abwehr's espionage network, wipes sweat from his brow despite the cold. His uniform, civilian clothes really, a threadbare wool sweater and trousers pilfered from a local tailor, itches against his skin. Becker's been at this for months now, ever since his insertion from Hamburg. The Gestapo had handpicked him for his steady hand on the key and his unremarkable face, the sort that blends into crowds like smoke in the night. Tonight's transmission is routine. Weather reports from the Channel ports, whispers of Allied troop movements gleaned from tavern gossip and shadowed meetings with informants. Nothing flashy, just the steady drip of intelligence that keeps the fatherland one step ahead. He adjusts the dials on the compact Siemens receiver, its green glow casting eerie shadows across the room. The set's antenna snakes up through a disguised chimney, invisible to the casual eye. Becker's fingers dance over the key, dot, dash, dot, encoding the message in the unbreakable Enigma cipher. Or so they've been told. The machine sits beside him, a black box of rotors and plugs, its keys clicking like impatient teeth. He feeds in the plaintext: British convoy sighted off Dover, 5 transports, light escort, estimated ETA Calais dawn. The Enigma whirs, spitting out the encrypted groups. Secure, impenetrable, that's the word from Berlin. But Becker's mind wanders as he taps out the signal. His stomach growls. The last decent meal was 2 days ago, a scrap of black bread and ersatz coffee that tasted like boiled socks. He thinks of his wife back in Munich, her letters smuggled through neutral channels, full of mundane worries about ration coupons and air raid drills. To steady himself, he lights another cigarette, the match flaring bright in the dimness. Inhale, exhale. The smoke curls toward the ceiling, and for a moment he forgets the rule, the one drilled into every operator from day one. Never, under any circumstances, transmit in the clear. No identifiers, no chit-chat, no personal flourishes. Just the code, cold and anonymous. His hand slips just a fraction. Instead of jumping straight to the encrypted burst, he keys in a quick, impulsive sign-off. A habit from his pre-war ham radio days, when he'd end sessions with a friendly 73 for best regards. It's nothing, he tells himself, a single group, harmless. The receiver crackles faintly in response, the ether alive with distant signals from U-boats prowling the Atlantic. Becker shakes it off, encrypts the rest properly, and sends the full message in one tight burst, 20 seconds tops. He powers down the set, stows it away, and slips out into the rain-slicked street, collar up against the downpour. The night swallows him whole. Far across the Channel, in the Buckinghamshire countryside, the sprawling grounds of Bletchley Park stir under a moonless sky. It's after midnight, and Hut 6 buzzes with the low murmur of typewriters and hushed voices. The air here smells different, of polished wood, fresh tea, and the ozone tang of overworked electrical circuits. Bomb machines chug like mechanical beasts, their drums spinning in a symphony of decryption. At the center of it all sits Lieutenant Commander Alistair Denniston, his pipe clenched between teeth yellowed from endless nights. Denniston's no field man. He's the quiet architect, the one who recruited the mathematicians and linguists who turned German secrets into Allied gold. Tonight, a young Wren, Women's Royal Naval Service, signals operator named Joan Clark, hands him a flimsy intercept. From the Lille net, sir. Short burst, but there's an anomaly at the end. Clark's voice is steady, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. She's one of the best, poached from Cambridge for her knack with patterns. Denniston scans the paper, his brow furrowing. The bulk is standard Enigma garble, resistant as ever, but trailing it like a loose thread is a plain text fragment. 73, amateur hour. A radio man's goodbye slipped through the cracks. Sloppy, Denniston mutters, passing it to the duty cryptanalyst, a lanky Polish exile named Marian Rejewski. Rejewski's team has been chipping away at Enigma since the 30s, smuggling their insights out of Warsaw before the Blitzkrieg. Traffic analysis, Denniston orders. Trace the frequency, the timing. If this operator's careless once, he might be again. The room springs to life. Analysts hunch over maps, plotting signal strengths from Y stations along the coast, coastal listening posts that triangulate enemy broadcasts like hunters scenting prey. Dover, Folkestone, even the wilds of Cornwall feed in data. The Lila operator's signal pings clear, 142.5 meters, a common Abwehr band, but the 73 is the gift. It humanizes the ghost, pins a personality to the machine. By dawn, they've got a fix. Not exact, Lille's sprawl hides a dozen possible sites, but close. A web begins to form. This isn't just one man, it's a network. Becker's burst mentions contacts in Rouen and Brussels, code names like Sparrow and Eagle. Bletchley's Ultra project, still just a security blanket for their decrypted halls, kicks into gear. Ultra, the word itself a veil, born from the need to classify intelligence too hot to touch. What started as a drab label in Whitehall memos has become the lifeblood of the war, shaving months off battles before they're even fought. Denniston steps outside for air, the gravel crunching under his boots. Dew clings to the hedges, and in the distance, the huts loom like wooden fortresses. He lights his pipe, watching the smoke rise. One missed rule. One human slip in a machine age. It could unravel everything. Back inside, Clark plots the next intercept. The Lil Man transmits again that week. Same frequency, same burst style. But now they're listening not just for words, but for the man behind them. His habits, his errors. The hunt is on, invisible threads pulling tight across the channel. Becker, oblivious, meets his contact in a Lille cafe 2 days later. The place reeks of chicory coffee and unwashed bodies, patrons hunched over newspapers headlining Rommel's desert push. Sparrow slides him an envelope, Allied convoy schedules, fresh from a bribed dockworker. Becker nods, commits it to memory, burns the paper in the hearth. He feels the weight of it all, the isolation gnawing at him. Another cigarette, another drag. Back in the attic that night, he keys in the report. Careful this time, or so he thinks, but the damage is done. The 73 echoes in Bletchley's logs, a breadcrumb leading straight to his door. As spring thaws the French fields, the network hums, agents relaying factory outputs, sabotage plans, whispers of invasion fears. Becker's just one cog, but his slip oils the gears for the Allies. In Bletchley, Rejewski smiles faintly over his tea. Patterns emerge, transmission times tied to train schedules, signal strengths narrowing to that Lille suburb. They don't strike yet. No, Ultra's power is patience, watching the web spin, then snipping it thread by thread. The war's turning, one intercepted spark at a time. And Becker, he's the spark that ignites it all. May 1942. The narrow backstreets of Lille twist like veins under the skin of the city, cobblestones slick with the remnants of yesterday's rain. You can hear the distant rumble of a German patrol truck, its engine coughing through the fog that rolls in from the Low Countries, carrying the briny tang of the sea mixed with the acrid bite of coal smoke from rationed fires. In a dimly lit basement beneath a bakery, the air is thick with the yeast of rising dough and the sharper edge of fear sweat. Flour dust hangs in motes, caught in the weak beam of a shielded lantern. Obergefreiter Karl-Heinz Becker descends the creaking stairs, his boots leaving faint prints in the soft earth floor. He's changed his haunt since the attic, too exposed, he tells himself, though he can't shake the nagging itch between his shoulder blades, like eyes watching from the shadows. The bakery's owner, a grizzled baker named Henri, with a limp from the Great War, nods curtly and points to a corner shrouded by sacks of ersatz flour. Becker's new setup, a salvaged table, the seaman's set camouflaged inside a hollowed-out bread oven, its antenna threaded through a vent to the alley above. He checks the connections with calloused fingers, the cold metal grounding him. No slips tonight, no more 73. That was a ghost of his old life, buried now. Upstairs, the bakery hums with false normalcy, Henri kneading dough, muttering curses at the flour shortage, the oven's heat masking any faint electronic whine. Becker unfolds a crumpled map, pencil marks tracing rail lines from Calais to the Ruhr. His latest haul, details on a supply train derailed near Abbeville, whispers of resistant sabotage that could tip the scales in the Atlantic convoy wars. Eagle, in Brussels, had passed it on yesterday, a risky handoff in a crowded market, briefcases brushing like lovers in the throng. Becker encodes it meticulously on the Enigma, rotors clicking in sequence. Today's settings from Berlin, Ringstellung AMD, plugboard pairs swapped for Fox and Wolf. The machine's lamps flicker, approving the cipher. He taps the key in short bursts, pausing to listen for interference. The ether crackles back, empty, secure. But across the channel, in the verdant sprawl of Bletchley Park, the night shift pulses with a different rhythm. Hut 8's long room, lined with blackboards scrawled in chalk and grease pencil, smells of ink and machine oil. The constant whir of the bombs, a forest of 100 spinning drums each, drowning out the tick of wall clocks. Lieutenant Commander Alistair Denniston paces the aisle, his polished shoes silent on the linoleum, a fresh intercept clutched in his hand. The paper's edges are frayed from hasty handling, the typed groups marching in rigid lines. Another burst from the Lille frequency, 142.5 meters, time-stamped 2247. No plaintext tale this time, but the patterns scream familiarity. The burst length, the timing synced to the 21-nut curfew lift. Even the subtle pause before transmission, like a man catching his breath. "Same hand," says Joan Clark, leaning over her desk, her pencil hovering above a logbook. The 25-year-old cryptanalyst's hair is pinned back severely, but a stray curl escapes, framing her focused gaze. She's traced the signal's evolution since that first 73, a breadcrumb that's bloomed into a trail. Operators consistent. Lille origin confirmed by Y station at Ventnor. Strength suggests urban low elevation. Basement, perhaps? Her voice cuts through the mechanical din, drawing nods from the team. Beside her, Marian Rajewski adjusts his spectacles, his fingers flying over a replica Enigma for manual cribs. Guesses at plaintext based on cribs from U-boat traffic. The Poles' pre-war breakthroughs have evolved here, fused with Turing's bomb designs, but it's the human element that quickens the pulse. Denniston halts, peering at the map pinned to the wall. France's north coast dotted with red pins for known Abwehr nets. Lille glows under a cluster, Becker's ghost pinning it down. Traffic analysis shows links, he says, tapping a line to Rouen. This one's feeding convoy data to U-boat command. If we crack the daily keys... He trails off as a wren bursts in, breathless, clutching a telex from Whitehall. More intercepts, a Brussels relay, codename Eagle, bouncing signals to a Hamburg hub. The 73 slip had humanized the operator, but now it's the network's veins they're mapping, frequencies overlapping like veins in a leaf, timings betraying meetups. In Lille, Becker powers down, heart pounding as he stows the set. He slips upstairs, accepting a heel of bread from Henry, the crust warm and deceptive in its comfort. "Trouble?" the baker whispers, eyes darting to the street. Becker shakes his head, but the weight presses. He's to meet Sparrow at dawn, a wiry Frenchman with a scar across his cheek, feeding factory intel from Lille's textile mills. They plan it in code, a park bench, newspaper folded just so. As Becker beds down on a pallet in the bakery's loft, the city's bells toll midnight, their peals muffled by blackout curtains. Sleep comes fitful, dreams of Hamburg's lights flickering like enigma lamps. By morning, Bletchley's web tightens. Clark cross-references the burst with weather reports. Transmissions spike post-rain, suggesting indoor ops. Rejowski cracks a partial key, using the 73 operator's habits as a crib. It's not full decryption, but enough to glimpse shadows, convoy ETAs, rail vulnerabilities. Denniston briefs the head of MI6's French section, a stern colonel named de Wavrin, known as Colonel Passy in free French circles. "We can't bomb blind," Passy argues, his accent clipped. "Need precision." SOE drops for confirmation. Denniston nods, the decision rippling out. Agents like Violette Szabo prepping parachutes in a Sussex hangar, their silk packs heavy with silenced pistols and crystal radio sets. Meanwhile, in the park's dew-kissed paths, Becker waits. Sparrows chirp overhead, ironic sentinels. Sparrow arrives late, face pale under his fedora. "Germans raiding Rouen last night," he mutters, passing a coded note. "Eagles shaken. Word of leaks." Becker's stomach twists, but he plays it cool, memorizing the mill outputs: silk for parachutes, cotton for uniforms, numbers that could arm a regiment. They part with a nod, melting into the market crowd where fishmongers hawk withered cod and women barter for eggs. Becker heads back, the note burned in an alley brazier, ashes scattering like doubts. At Bletchley, the afternoon brings a breakthrough. A follow-up burst from Lille, careless again, a fraction longer than usual, yields a plugboard hint. Turing himself, summoned from his hut, tweaks a bombe run. Drums spin faster, lights flashing victory, partial plane, textile production up 15%, sabotage minimal. The room erupts in quiet cheers, teacups raised. Denniston watches from the door, pipe unlit. One man's error, a network's noose. Ultra's veil holds, but the threads pull taut. In France, the hunters become the hunted, invisible no longer. Becker, wiping ink from his hands in the bakery, feels the shift, a chill wind from the north, carrying whispers of doom. He lights a cigarette, the flame steady, but his hand trembles just once. The war's machine grinds on, rotors turning, signals flying. And in the ether, the Allies listen closer than ever. June 1942. The sun hangs low over the scarred fields outside Rouen, painting the horizon in bruised oranges and purples, the kind of light that turns barbed wire fences into jagged silhouettes against the sky. You can taste the dust on your tongue, kicked up by a lone truck rumbling along the rutted road, its canvas sides flapping like weary sails. The air carries the faint metallic tang of rust from derelict railcars, sidelined by sabotage, and farther off, the lowing of cattle herded towards slaughterhouses that feed the Wehrmacht's endless maw. In a nondescript farmhouse on the city's eastern fringe, the scent of boiled cabbage lingers from a midday meal, now soured by the heat of a hidden attic. Wooden beams creak under the weight of summer's humidity, and motes of hay dust swirl in the slivers of light, piercing the blackout shutters. Obergefreiter Karl-Heinz Becker hunches over his latest setup, sweat beading on his forehead as he solders a loose wire on the Siemens transmitter. The device, smuggled in parts through Belgium, hums faintly now, its antenna disguised as a clothesline strung between two apple trees outside. Becker's moved again, Lille's bakeries too crowded with whispers of Gestapo sweeps. Rouen's quieter, or so he hopes, with its river mists providing cover for signals that bounce off the Seine's bends. His contact, Eagle, a gaunt Belgian engineer named Lucien Duval, with oil-stained hands and a perpetual squint from factory shifts, paces the creaky floorboards below. Duval's real work is at the Renault plant, sabotaging engines meant for panzer divisions, but his side gig feeds Becker intel on troop shipments rolling east toward the Eastern Front. "The raids hit close last week," Duval mutters through the floor vent, his Flemish accent thick. "Your Brussels relay, gone." "They pulled 3 from the canal docks." Becker pauses, pliers mid-twist, his pulse quickening. He thinks of that 73 slip, buried in his mind like a bad tooth, but shakes it off. Paranoia is the real killer in this game. By dusk, the message is ready. Partial manifests from the plant. 1-200 truck chassis delayed by mechanical faults. Code for Duval's wrenchwork. Becker slots the Enigma's rotors. Today's settings whispered via courier. Ringstellung BNE. Plugs linking river and steel. The keys clack under his fingers, the cipher groups spilling out like dark secrets. He encrypts, then bursts it in 3 sharp pulses, the key dancing, ... pause, ... The receiver whispers acknowledgements from a U-boat command relay in Cherbourg, faint but affirming, secure. He exhales, wiping his brow on his sleeve, the wool rough against damp skin. Downstairs, Duval shares a flask of Calvados, the apple brandy burning sweet down Becker's throat. To the fatherland, Duval toasts dryly, but his eyes dart to the windows where fireflies wink like distant traces. Across the channel, in the deepening twilight of Bletchley Park, the air in Hut 6 thickens with the aroma of strong tea and the sharp bite of chalk dust from erasers slapping blackboards clean. The room's a hive of controlled frenzy. Slide rules clicking, pencils scratching logarithmic tables, the relentless churn of 3 bombs synced in a corner, their 300 drums whirring like a mechanical heartbeat. Lieutenant Commander Alistair Denniston stands at the head of the long oak table, his pipe smoke curling toward the rafters, mingling with the faint perfume of Joan Clark's lavender soap, a rare touch of civility in the grind. Clark slides a fresh intercept across the table, her voice cutting through the din. Rouen net, sir. 142.5 meters again, but relayed. Burst at 1932, post-curfew. At 26, she's a fixture now, her analytical mind dissecting patterns like a surgeon. The paper bears the ghostly imprint of radio waves captured by a Y station at start point, Devon. Coastal ears tuned to the enemy's hum. No plain text slip this time, but the fingerprints there. Burst cadence matching Lila's ghost. A 2-3-second hesitation before the final group, like a smoker pausing for a drag. Denniston's eyes narrow behind his spectacles. Linked to our 73 operator. Traffic flow shows a Brussels hop, Eagles tag from the partial crib last month. Marian Rajewski, the Polish cryptanalyst, leans in, his fingers tracing the groups on a wax tablet. Exiled since 39, his pre-war Enigma breaks, smuggled out in a son's teddy bear, form the bedrock here. Plugboard variant, he says, accent clipped. Tri-crib, production delay from Renault logs. Turing's electromechanical beast might chew it. Alan Turing himself isn't present, holed up in Hut 8 with his Banbarismus for naval keys, but his shadow looms, the bomb's design a testament to his genius. A technician flips switches, and the machines roar to life, drums accelerating in a blur, pinwheels lighting up in cascades of green and red. Outside, the Buckinghamshire lanes whisper with evening breeze, carrying the scent of blooming hawthorn from the park's gardens. Denniston steps out briefly, gravel crunching, to relay orders via secure line to SOE headquarters in Baker Street. Confirm Rouen site, he instructs Colonel Maurice Buckmaster, SOE's French chief, his voice tinny over the scrambler. Agent insertion, F section, drop tonight. Target the farmhouse cluster east of the river. Buckmaster, a bluff ex-businessman with a moustache like a broom, grunts assent. In a nearby airfield, a Halifax bomber warms its Merlin engines, the 4 blades spinning up with a throaty growl. Violette Szabo, the sharp-eyed SOE operative, checks her parachute harness in the dim hangar light, her Sten gun oiled and silenced, crystal radio set tucked into her jumpsuit. For France, she murmurs to her handler, the words steeling her against the jump into the unknown. Back in the hut, breakthrough sparks. The bomb halts with a triumphant clunk, partial decrypt, chassis delay 1,200 units, sabotage suspected. Clark's pencil flies, cross-referencing with MI5's industrial spies. Eagles Duval, Renault insider, feeds to Lilleman then U-boats. The network map updates, red lines snaking from Rouen to Brussels, Lille, even a tenuous thread to Hamburg's Abwehr HQ. Rajewski nods, sipping tea gone cold. Operator's mobile. Signal strength varies. Farmhouse, low antenna. Deniston's pipe relights with a snap. Ultra's code word, once mere paper protocol, now pulses with life. Intelligence so vital, it demands isolation, shared only with Churchill's inner circle, steering convoys away from wolf packs before teeth close. In Rouen, night falls heavy, the farmhouse's lantern dimmed to a slit. Becker and Duval huddle over a map by candlelight, plotting the next handoff. Textile shipments from Lille to bolster U-boat crews. Sparrows due in 3 days, Becker says, voice low. Park in the old quarter, same signal. Duval nods, but unease flickers. Rumours of resistance cells sniffing too close, shadows in the markets. They douse the light, bedding down on straw pallets that itch like accusations. Becker dreams fitfully of Hamburg's beer halls, his wife's laugh, waking to the hoot of an owl, or was it an engine overhead? Dawn breaks misty over the Seine, and in the skies above Normandy, the Halifax drones low, engines muffled by cloud cover. Szebo's team, 3 agents, wireless op included, tumbles out at 3,000 feet, silk canopies blooming like white flowers against the grey. They land in a meadow 2 kilometers from Becker's farm, rolling into ditches, gathering gear under the stars. Szebo's radio crackles to life hours later, her fingers keying a burst to Bletchley. Foxtrot section in position. Recon east farmhouses commence. Clark receives it first, the signal pinging clear. Eyes on target, she logs, the room holding its breath. By midday, Becker ventures out, requisitioning false papers from a local forger in Rouen back alleys, where the air reeks of tannery hides and desperation. He doesn't see the shadows, the SOE team circling, binoculars glinting from hedgerows. Duval stays put, tinkering with the set, oblivious. But in Bletchley, Deniston watches the telex spool. One slip months ago, now a noose tightening. The network frays at the edges, a Brussels safehouse raided blind by ultra tips, Eagle's contacts scattering like leaves. Becker returns empty-handed, the forger's ink still fresh on his ID, but the air feels charged, electric with unseen eyes. As evening transmission time nears, Becker keys the set once more, the enigma whirring, bursts fly. Convoy feints to draw Allied shipping into U-boat ambushes. But this time, the ether feels crowded, a faint interference like distant thunder. He powers down, heart hammering, and slips into the night for the meet with Sparrow. The web contracts, invisible strands pulling him toward the center. In Bletchley, Clark smiles faintly over her logs. The hunt sharpens, rotors turning inexorably toward unraveling. July 1942. The hedgerows around Rouen's eastern farms stand like sentinel walls, their thorny branches heavy with summer's lush green, dripping dew that soaks through woolen trousers and chills the skin beneath. You can hear the lazy buzz of bees foraging in wildflower patches, undercut by the occasional snap of a twig under boot or the distant bark of a farm dog, chained and suspicious. The air tastes of earth and ripening apples from the orchards, mingled with the faint, oily scent of a hidden radio, set cooling in the attic loft. Obergefreiter Karl-Heinz Becker crouches in the farmhouse's overgrown yard, spade in hand, pretending to dig for potatoes while his eyes scan the tree line. The sun beats down, turning his shirt to a second skin, sweat tracing paths through the stubble on his jaw. It's been a week since the drop, though he doesn't know it yet, and the nights have grown restless, filled with phantom engine drones that pull him from sleep. Duval, his Belgian contact, has taken to sleeping with a Luger under his pillow, the pistol's grip worn smooth from factory drills. Raids in Paris, Duval had grumbled that morning over watery porridge, his voice a low rumble like gravel under tires. They're sniffing for spies, your bursts, too regular, like clockwork. Becker straightens, wiping dirt from his hands on his trousers, the soil gritty between fingers still raw from keying Morse. He's shifted the schedule, transmissions now at odd hours, feints with dummy signals to muddy the ether. But the unease gnaws. The Enigma sits upstairs, rotors aligned for tonight's key. Ringstellung COF, plugs bridging hedge and farm. His latest intel, pieced from Sparrow's note burned to ash yesterday. Allied paratrooper sightings near Caen, whispers of sabotage teams probing rail yards. Valuable for U-boat diversions, drawing shipping into Wolfpack jaws off Brest. He heads inside, the screen door creaking like a warning, and climbs to the attic where hay bales mask the setup. The Siemens hums to life, antenna taut outside, vibrating faintly in the breeze. Across the channel, under the relentless English drizzle that turns Bletchley Park's paths to mud, Hut 8's windows fog with the breath of 24 analysts packed shoulder to shoulder. The room reeks of damp wool and the acrid tang of overheated valves from the bombs, their drums now a constant thunder, synced to tackle naval variants bleeding into the Abwehr nets. Lieutenant Commander Alistair Denniston hovers near the central plotting board, his pipe forgotten between clenched teeth, ash flaking onto a stack of intercepts. The latest from the Rouen frequency, captured at 0314 by the Y station at Scarborough, lies open before him, groups marching like soldiers under Joan Clark's precise annotations. "Deviation," Clark says, her voice steady amid the clatter of typewriters, pushing back a lock of hair with the eraser end of her pencil. At 27, she's indispensable now, her crib sheets the glue holding partial breaks together. Burst shorter, timing off by 47 minutes from the Lille pattern, operators adapting, smart, but not enough. The paper bears faded pencil marks, signal strength peaking at 4.2 microvolts, triangulated to a rural fix 5 kilometers east of Rouen, farm country by the river. Marian Rajowski, sleeves rolled to his elbows, peers over her shoulder, his replica Enigma wired to a jury-rigged board for manual trials. "Crib from SOE drop reports," he suggests, accent sharpening with focus. "Paratrooper activity. Fits the weather logs. Feed it in." Denniston nods, signaling the operator. The bomb lurches into motion, a beast of bakelite and brass, its 96 drums, upgraded from Turing's original design, spinning in a frenzy that vibrates the floorboards. Lights flicker, red for rejects, green for alignments. Minutes stretch like hours, the room silent save for the mechanical roar and the drip of rain on the roof. Then a halt, clunk, and a strip of paper unspools. Allied drops near Caen, resistance probing rails. Clark's eyes widen. It's not full, but the shadows cohere. "Eagles feed," she logs, cross-hatching lines on the network map. Red pins cluster, Rouen farmhouse, Lille bakery ghost, Brussels canal vanished. Ultra's classified hush now blankets SOE ops, memos stamped most secret, no leaks or heads roll. Outside, in a Baker Street briefing room thick with cigarette haze, Colonel Maurice Buckmaster pores over aerial recon photos, the glossies showing Normandy's patchwork fields under a grid of imagined lines. Violette Sabo, fresh from her drop and nursing a twisted ankle in a safe-house barn, relays her wire. Target attic, confirmed. Single op, male, 30s, antenna clothesline. Contact Eagle inside. Her voice, tinny over the secure line, carries the edge of exhaustion. Mud-caked boots kicked off, Sten gun disassembled for cleaning. Buckmaster, mustache twitching, glances at his aide. "Close in, no arrests, disrupt the net. Plant false intel if you can." The order ripples back to the field. Zabo's team, 4 strong now with a local resistance guide named Jacques, a one-armed veteran with a beret pulled low, circles the farm under cover of dusk. Binoculars catch Becker's silhouette in the attic window, a match flaring as he lights a cigarette, old habit, deadly tell. In the farmhouse, night cloaks the yard in inky black, stars pricking through thin clouds like distant Morse dots. Becker taps the key, fingers steady. The Caen intel encrypted, burst in 2 pulses to evade direction finding. The ether swallows it, acknowledgement crackling from Cherbourg, U-boat command eager, plotting ambushes that could sink a dozen Liberty ships. He powers down, the set's warmth lingering on his palms, and descends to join Duval by the hearth. The Belgian stirs a pot of turnip stew, the steam carrying a faint, nourishing bitterness. "Sparrow's late," Becker says, accepting a bowl, the wooden spoon rough-hewn. Duval shrugs, but his eyes flick to the door. Markets are hot, Gestapo checkpoints everywhere. Unseen, Szabo's team creeps closer, Jacques leading through a drainage ditch that reeks of stagnant water and rot. Her silenced well-rod pistol, a squat tube of British ingenuity, rests heavy in her holster, suppressor muffling even the slide. They halt at the orchard's edge, the apple tree's branches clawing at the sky. Through field glasses, Szabo spots the antenna's subtle sway, the attic's faint glow. "Wireless active," she whispers into her crystal set, the Morse key clicking soft confirmation to Bletchley. Clark receives it at 22:45, the signal pinging like a heartbeat. Visual on operator. Net active. Denniston back in the hut relays to Whitehall. Partial decrypt steering convoy on 115 clear of wolf packs, Dönitz's U-boats chasing ghosts in the fog. Becker finishes his meal, the stew settling like lead in his gut. He steps outside for air, the night cool against his face, crickets chirping a deceptive lullaby. A twig snaps. Distant, he thinks, a fox perhaps. But Szabo's team holds breath, Jacques' hand on her arm. They wait, shadows among shadows, planting a limpet mine on the farm's lone truck as a parting gift, disruption without alarm. By midnight, Becker retires, Luger by his bed, dreams tangled with static and wives' voices. Duval keeps watch, pipe smoke curling, unaware of the eyes. At Bletchley, the bomb spins again on a fresh intercept, a Brussels relay bouncing Becker's burst. Rajewski cracks the plugboard. Ambush-planned Brest approaches. Cheers are muted. Tea poured in victory. Denniston stares at the map. Pipe relit. 173, months back, now unravels threads across Europe. Agents vanishing, U-boats starved. Ultra's secret swells, cutting the war's fabric one signal at a time. In Rouen, the noose draws imperceptibly tighter, the farmhouse a trap waiting to spring. Becker sleeps on, the ether's ghosts closing in. August 1942. The orchards encircling the Rouen farmhouse sag under the weight of early harvest apples, their branches bowed like weary soldiers, the ground beneath carpeted in fallen fruit that ferments into a cloying sweetness undercut by the sharp rot of overripe cores. You can feel the humidity pressing down, thick as a wool blanket, turning every breath into a labored draw through air laced with pollen and the distant smoke of harvest bonfires. Cicadas drone in the underbrush, a relentless pulse that masks the soft crunch of footsteps on leaf litter, while the Seine's murmur echoes faintly from the valley below, carrying the brackish whisper of tidal mudflats. Obergefreiter Karl-Heinz Becker stands at the attic window, a silhouette etched against the slatted shutters, his breath fogging the glass as he scans the tree line for the umpteenth time that afternoon. The sun slants through in golden shafts, illuminating dust motes that dance like errant signals in the beam. His Enigma machine rests on a makeshift bench of splintered crates, rotors idle but ready, the black Enigma box scarred from hasty relocations. First Lille's attic, then the bakery basement, now this rural perch that's starting to feel like a cage. Sweat trickles down his spine, soaking the collar of his shirt. A civilian guise fraying at the edges with unwashed days. Duval downstairs hammers nails into a loose floorboard. The rhythmic thuds are false reassurance, but Becker knows better. The Belgians' jokes have dried up, replaced by sidelong glances, and a Luger never more than arm's reach away. The latest whisper from Sparrow arrived at dawn, smuggled in a hollowed loaf from a market contact. U-boat wolf packs repositioning off the Biscay coast, hungry for convoy meat. But Allied feints, ghost ships drawing them into minefields, have bloodied Dönitz's fleet. Becker's role sharpens. His bursts must pinpoint real targets, rail shipments of bauxite from the south to fuel Luftwaffe fighters. He slots the rotors, Ringstellung DPG, plugs chaining Apple and River, and encodes the plaintext with deliberate care. Fingers steady on the keys, despite the tremor in his gut. No slips. The 73 is a ghost he buries deeper each night. But paranoia claws back. Why the empty roads, the farm dog's uncharacteristic silence? He taps the Morse in a single compressed burst at 1622. The keys clicks, muffled by a rag wrapped around it, the Siemens transmitter's fan whirring softly like a conspirator's breath. The antenna, still the innocuous clothesline, vibrates as the signal leaps into the ether, acknowledged by a faint ping from the Cherbourg relay. Secure, or so the static suggests. Becker powers down, the set's warmth ebbing from his palms, and descends the ladder, each rung groaning under his weight. In the kitchen, Duval looks up from a map scrawled with rail lines, his face gaunt in the hearth's dying light. Eagle's net in Brussels, picked clean last week. 3 gone, no traces. Becker nods, pouring Calvados into chipped mugs. The liquids burn a temporary fire against the chill settling in his bones. They toast silently, the farmhouse's walls seeming to lean inward, shadows lengthening as thunder rumbles distant over the channel. Far to the northwest, in the sodden embrace of Bletchley Park, where the August rains have turned the lawns to quagmires and the air hangs heavy with petrichor and peat, Hut 6 throbs with the urgency of a heart under strain. The long room's fluorescent bulbs buzz overhead, casting harsh pools on tables cluttered with graph paper, crib sheets, and half-empty thermos flasks of tea gone brackish. The scent of wet wool clings to uniforms, mingling with the metallic bite of ink from frantic note-taking and the ozone hum of 4 bombs, now arrayed like sentinels, their upgraded drums, 144 strong per machine, churning through permutations at a fevered pitch. Lieutenant Commander Alistair Denniston leans against a blackboard, arms crossed, his pipe unlit for once, the stem clenched like a talisman as he eyes the latest intercept unspooling from a telex. Joan Clark, her sleeves pinned above the elbows, traces the signal's waveform on a plotting sheet, her pencil lead snapping under pressure. At 28, the weight of unbroken nights etches faint lines around her eyes, but her focus remains laser-sharp, dissecting the Rouen burst captured at 1622 by the Y station at start point. Coastal listeners whose directional arrays sweep the horizon like invisible scythes. Same cadence, sir. 2.1 second hesitation mid-burst. Operators in a rural fix, low power to dodge us, but the frequency's a dead giveaway. 142.5 meters, synced to Abwehr weather nets. Her voice carries over the mechanical symphony, drawing Marian Rajewski from his corner desk, where a mock Enigma setup bristles with test leads. The Polish exile's hands, scarred from pre-war tinkering in Warsaw workshops, adjust a dial. Crib from SOE, bauxite shipment south. Plugboard hints at river pairs, try it. Denniston signals, and the lead bomb operator, a stern-faced petty officer named Higgins, throws the master switch. The machines awaken with a collective shudder, drums accelerating into a blur that rattles teacups and sets teeth on edge, pinwheels flashing in erratic patterns, red rejects cascading, then a stutter of greens aligning like stars in constellation. The room holds its breath, the rain pattering on the roof, a tense counterpoint. Minutes bleed into eternity until, clunk, the halt echoes. Paper strip feeding out. Rail, bauxite to Brest. ETA 20th. Wolfpack vector. Clark exhales, logging it with swift strokes. Fuller break than Rouen last month. Networks hemorrhaging. Brussels relay dark since July 15th, per MI6 confirms. The map updates. Pins cluster tighter around the farmhouse, red lines fraying like torn veins. Ultra's classified aura now a steel vault, intel funneled solely to Churchill's war room, steering on 117 convoy through safe lanes while U-boats prowl empty seas. In a fog-shrouded SOE safehouse on the Seine's banks, 15 kilometers from the target, Violette Szabo pores over her crystal set by lantern light, the device's dials glowing faintly green. Her team, Jacques the guide, 2 wiry F-section agents, and a demo expert named Pierre, huddles close, the air thick with the musty scent of hayloft straw and gun oil from disassembled Stens. Szabo's ankle, still tender from the drop, throbs under bandages, but her resolve steels as Bletchley's confirm wires in. Strike window 48 hours, disrupt, extract if viable. She keys a response, Morse dots and dashes whispering into the night. Positioned, false trail planted, dummy agent in Caen to draw Gestapo. Jacques nods, his one good arm loading gel-ignite charges, the plastic's chemical tang sharp. They've seeded the network with poison. Forged notes slipped into Sparrow's path, pointing to phantom resistance cells, forcing the Abwehr to chase shadows while the real blade hovers. Back in the farmhouse, dusk bleeds into night, the sky bruising purple as Becker and Duval fortify their perimeter. Barbed wire strung low across the yard, the dog unchained and patrolling with low growls. Becker lights a cigarette on the porch, the matches flare brief, smoke curling upward to join the gathering clouds. Sparrows overdue again, the park meet scrubbed by checkpoint scares, but the intel burns in Becker's mind. Paratrooper drops escalating, factories idling under Allied bombs. He crushes the butt under heel, the ember dying like a hope, and retires to the attic, Enigma waiting for the midnight check-in. Sleep evades him, the ceiling beams staring down like accusing fingers. At Bletchley, Denniston briefs via scrambler to Baker Street, Colonel Buckmaster's voice gravelly on the line. SOE greenlit, dawn raid, French resistance link-up for cleanup. The colonel, pacing his office amid stacks of agent files, hangs up and signals the field. In Rouen, Szabo's team ghosts forward under moonless cover, splashing through irrigation ditches that reek of algae and mud, well rods drawn, hearts pounding in sync with the cicadas' fade. They reach the orchard's fringe by Auteuil-sur-Ger, the farmhouse a dark bulk, antenna swaying like a noose in the breeze. Jacques signals halt, binoculars revealing Becker's form at the window, silhouette keying a test burst, oblivious. The demo man plants charges on the outbuilding's wall, timed for 0430, enough chaos to scatter without full alarm. Szabo whispers into her set. In position, operator active. Clark logs it at Bletchley, the hut's clocks ticking toward unraveling. A fresh intercept pings, Becker's check-in, partial crib yielding Caen drops confirmed, steering RAF Lancasters to phantom targets, wolf packs diverted to barren hunts. Denniston watches the rain sheet the windows, pipe finally lit, the smoke a veil over triumph's edge. One forgotten rule, a network's death spiral. In the farmhouse, Becker pauses mid-key, a chill wind rattling the shutters. The noose cinches, threads snapping one by one, the ether alive with unseen hunters. Dawn creeps, pregnant with end. September 1942. The first blush of dawn creeps over the Rouen orchards like spilled blood on the horizon, turning the dew-kissed apples to crimson orbs that glisten in the half-light. You can feel the night's humidity clinging to your skin, a clammy shroud broken only by the sharp chill of approaching autumn, the air sharp with the scent of damp earth and fermenting fruit underfoot. Crickets yield to the tentative calls of rooks wheeling overhead, their wings slicing the mist that rolls from the Seine like ghostly fingers probing the farmhouse's eaves. Inside, the attic air hangs stagnant, thick with the residue of machine oil and the faint, acrid bite of Becker's last cigarette, stubbed out in a tin ashtray hours ago. Obergefreiter Karl-Heinz Becker stirs on his straw pallet, the rough fibers pricking through his blanket like accusations. His eyes snap open at the first grey light filtering through the shutters, heart thudding from a dream of endless static, rotors spinning into infinity. The Enigma machine squats on its crate bench, a silent sentinel, its black casing etched with fingerprints from nights of frantic encoding. He swings his legs over the edge, boots scraping the floorboards, and checks the Siemens transmitter, wires taut, dials set for the morning burst. No sleep for Duval downstairs. The Belgian's snores rumble faintly, punctuated by the dog's restless whine from the yard. Becca's mind races. Sparrow's silence stretches to days, rail intel piling up unsent. Bauxite cars idling in sidings, ripe for U-boat supply runs. One more transmission, then relocate. The 73 haunts him now, a foolish echo in the quiet. He slots the rotors, final settings from a faded courier note, Ringstellung EQH, plugs linking dawn and mist, and feeds in the plaintext, bauxite convoy stalled Abbeville 500 tons, escort light, vector Wolfpack northwest. The keys clatter under his fingers, the cipher groups emerging in neat rows on the lamplit paper. He encrypts, pauses to light a fresh cigarette. The match's sulphur flare the only sound, then taps the Morse in a tight burst, the key's rhythm steady despite the tremor in his hand. Pause. The signal leaps skyward, the antenna humming faintly outside. Acknowledgement crackles back from Cherbourg, brief and affirming. Secure. Becca exhales smoke, watching it coil toward the rafters, and begins stowing the set, rotors whirring to neutral. But outside, in the orchard's tangled undergrowth, Violette Sabo crouches low, her breath shallow, the well-rod pistol suppressor cold against her palm. The air tastes of wet leaves and adrenaline, her team's shadows blending with the mist. Jacques to her left, his one arm steadying a garrote wire. Pierre, the demo man, clutching the detonator for the outbuilding charges. Gelignite planted at 0430 sharp, and the wireless op young Marie, keying silent confirmations to Bletchley from a concealed foxhole. Sabo's ankle throbs under its wrap, but she ignores it, eyes locked on the farmhouse through binoculars, attic shutter ajar, Becca's silhouette moving like a target in a shooting gallery. "Operator down," she whispers into her crystal set, the Morse clicking soft. "Burst complete. Strike now." Jacques nods, slipping forward like a wraith, the team's boots muffled on mossy ground. The explosion rips the dawn at 0432, a muffled thunder from the outbuilding, flames licking the barn's roof as the truck's fuel ignites in a whoosh of orange. Becca freezes mid-stow, cigarette tumbling from his lips, the Enigma crashing to the floorboards. Shouts erupt below, Duval's curse, the dog's frantic barking, and Becca grabs his Luger, chambering a round with a metallic snick. He bolts down the ladder, boots pounding, bursting into the kitchen, where Duval fumbles for his own pistol, face ashen in the sudden glare from the yard. "Saboteurs!" Becca yells, yanking the door open to chaos, flames crackling, shadows darting in the smoke. He fires blindly into the mist, crack, crack, the rounds whipping harmlessly into the orchard. Sabo's team surges. Jacques loops the wire around Duval's neck from the doorway. The Belgian's gasp cut short as he thrashes, Luger clattering free. Pierre levels his sten, suppressed bursts stitching the doorframe as Becca dives behind the table, splintering wood. Szabo flanks left, Wellrod barking twice, Foot, nicking Becca's shoulder, blood blooming hot through his shirt. He returns fire, the Luger's report deafening in the confined space, grazing Jacques' beret. Marie covers from the porch, her radio abandoned, tossing a flashbang that rolls under the table. Boom of light and thunder, Becca's vision blurring white. He staggers up, firing wild, but Szabo's upon him, pistol butt cracking his temple. He crumples, the world tilting into black, the farmhouse reeking of cordite and blood. By 05:15 it's over. Duval's body slumps in the hall, wire embedded deep. Becca zip-tied and gagged in the attic, the Enigma smashed under boot heels, rotors scattered like broken teeth. Szabo keys her set, one last time. Net terminated, operator captured, eagle down, exfil now. They melt into the mist, leaving flames to draw the Gestapo, false papers planted to implicate a rival Abwehr cell, poison in the well. Across the channel, In Bletchley's awakening huts, the telex chatters at 5:20, Joan Clark snatching the flimsy as dawn lightens the windows. The air still carries last night's rain, mingled with fresh coffee brewing in the corner. Rouen confirmed, she reads aloud, voice threading the quiet. Lieutenant Commander Alistair Denniston, pipe in hand, nods from the plotting board, where red lines now sever the network. Lille ghosted, Brussels razed, Hamburg feeds starved. Marian Rajewski smiles thinly over his tea. The bomb's final run on Becker's dawn burst, yielding full plaintext. The bauxite intel, now twisted into a trap, convoy rerouted, Wolfpack U-552, and her sisters lured into RAF torpedo runs off Brest. Churchill receives the ultra-brief by noon in the cabinet war rooms, the concrete bunker humming with maps and aids. One slip, he rumbles, cigar smoke wreathing his scowl, and Dönitz loses his pack. Months shaved, lads, ships saved, the Atlantic hours. The code word Ultra, born as paper protocol, proves its mettle, Wolfpacks shattered, invasions forestalled, the war's tide turning on intercepted sparks. Becker, interrogated in a London black site, spills under sodium thiopental. Names, frequencies, the 73, confessed as ham folly. His network dies with him, threads unraveled, the ether silenced. In Buckinghamshire, Denniston steps into the morning sun, gravel crunching hedges blooming defiant. The hunt ends, but Ultra endures, secrets cutting years from the fight, sinking dozens in the deep. One missed rule, a war's pivot. The rotors still turn, but now for victory.